What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another podcast episode. I'm excited that you're here. Thanks for sticking around. If you're watching these on YouTube, leave us a good comment, leave us some likes, hit the notification bell so you get access to this stuff when we let it loose on the internet. And if you're listening to the podcast anywhere else, you have a podcast catcher. Give us some good stuff. We do appreciate that. So today we're going to talk about the best places for civil engineers in 2022. It's going to be an exciting topic. This is typically a report that's produced by the ASCE. They do this every year. And so it's fun to talk about the places that are best for civil engineers as it relates to, a cost of living, how much money that you make there, and some other factors. So today I bring my brother Mark on and we'll talk about that. But if you guys need help getting to the professional engineering status, definitely go check us out at civilengineeringacademy.com. We have a complete FE review course. We have a complete PE review course there as well. And if you just need practice exams, go check us out. We even have a computer-based simulator for the FE as well. We're working on one for the PE. It's all good stuff. So check us out at civilengineeringacademy.com, where we're going to help you out. So with that, let's bring my brother Mark on. Mark, how's it going?
Hey, good. It's good to be with you again, as always. You keep dragging me on these things, Isaac. So
you're a continual guest. You're just part of the show.
I like it. I must not be screwing things up too bad for you.
Looks like you got a little sun today. What's going on?
Yeah, so I went out to our nephew's rugby game today, and it was a sunny day. Got a little sun. You can see that. Got a little red there.
It's like 75-ish degrees.
Yeah,
it's getting nice out there.
Yeah, but for March and Salt Lake City, those are nice temps.
Oh yeah,
so I had to get outside.
Okay, I like it. Yeah. Well, this is going to be a good one. So we like to jump on and talk about the best places for civil engineers in 2022. Why don't we discuss a little bit before we jump into this? The ASCE, writes these reports for civil engineers. How in the world did they determine what the best place is for a civil engineer to work at?
Yeah, so they take the major metropolitan areas pretty much across the whole country, and they assign certain indexes, right, to several categories. The first is a salary survey index, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But the next one they call a civil engineering job index, and then they have a cost of living index, which they come up with. And then they do an overall score. And so what they do is for each metropolitan area, they take the salary survey index, they add the civil engineering job index to that. Then they subtract the cost of living index from that number. And then it comes up with an overall composite score. And then they just rank them from highest to lowest using that criteria. And so for salaries, ASCE turns to their annual member salary survey. So every third quarter, and Isaac, you and I have talked about this on other podcasts before. It's something that we like to focus on. They take their little salary survey and they find out who has what kind of salaries and rank all of those things, as we've talked before. And they split everything out by civil engineering discipline and your level. So your seniority in whatever position that you've got, they classify all those things in that report. And then they assign an index score of 100 to the average civil engineering salary from the U.S. Census Bureau, right? So that average U.S. salary for civil engineers from the U.S. Census Bureau is the benchmark, right? That's index number 100. And so everything compares to that.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
So why don't we break down each one of these little categories, or at least talk about them a little bit? So the first one you talked about was the salary index, I believe. So that's just what you were mentioning.
Yes. And then we go into the civil engineering job index. And so for that, ASCE leans on a consultant that's called Madgex Inc. And they're out of Hoboken, New Jersey. And they analyze the number of civil engineering jobs that are available in a year's period. And for this report, it's between June 14th of 2020 through June 14th of 21. And a larger number of open civil engineering positions in a certain area obviously earns a higher score. Yeah, and so they index it off of this this Madgex Inc. report.
Okay, so for the first two categories, then a higher score is better. So for salary survey index, a higher score is better. It means that we're getting more money in that city.
Yes. And so the index for the civil engineering job index is just the average across the country, right? However many civil engineering jobs are available divided by the number of metropolitan areas that they're surveying. And that gives them their index of 100, right? And then everything is compared to that. Okay.
Gotcha.
So we've got the salary survey index, we've got the civil engineering job index, and then we jump to the cost of living index. And that's the one that takes a negative. You subtract that number from the others. Obviously, it's a negative thing to have a higher cost of living in a certain area.
And that so one accounts for a lot of things. I mean, it's housing, groceries, all that good stuff.
So the index for the cost of living is calculated, by using data from the Council for Community and Economic Research, which sometimes is known as C2ER, right? Based in Arlington, Virginia, and they examine data coming out of the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? So again,
everything's going up.
Yeah, they average all the costs through the country, and I'm sure they look at the big cost items, like your groceries, your housing, your healthcare, your transportation, utilities, those kind of things. Add them up for every metropolitan area, divide it by the number of metropolitan areas, and then bam, you get your index, and then you have something to compare things to. So
awesome.
Yeah. So that's the details on that.
There's a lot of information to get to the scores, but at the end of the day, we probably care about what the overall score is. So let's talk about where the top 10 places are based on the ASCE report. And it sounds like number one ends up being Los Angeles. So I guess a couple questions come to mind on that one, but why do you think Los Angeles ranks the highest?
Yeah, as you look at their little matrix here on all their scoring, Los Angeles scored number one. Its salary survey index was 109.6, so it wasn't the highest. The reason they scored so high is their civil engineering job index was over 300 at 300.9. So there's just a ton of jobs available in that Los Angeles metro area. And then, of course, the cost of living index was a little bit higher than, in fact, it was higher than everything except for, I believe, well, it was higher than everything except for Washington, D.C. and New York City. But because that civil engineering job index was so high at 300, when you subtract the cost of living index at 128.1, Los Angeles had a composite score at 282.3. Right. So
do you think that has anything to do with people getting out of California these days?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot of those, reports that there's a lot of people leaving California because, there's been a lot of issues with COVID and the shutdowns that have happened and the impact to businesses. And some people are getting tired of those things happening and they're leaving. But that's a good point to bring up, Isaac. That may be what's generating some of the availability that, on these jobs is people have left and they're trying to get other people to fill those positions, So yeah, that's a good thought.
Yep, I don't know. That's what I see when I saw how high that index was. That all those reports about people leaving. It makes me wonder if that's contributing to that number. I'm sure it is in some way, but I don't know if it's
Yeah.
that much. But
Yeah.
it's
That's
probably something.
that's a good thought.
So number two comes in with Denver.
Denver. And so the salary index on Denver was 96.5. The civil engineering job index was 205. Cost of living was pretty decent at 97.6. And then so their composite score was 203.9, putting them in second place. So um, again, their job index really bumped them up. Apparently, there's a lot of jobs available in Denver right now.
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and agree with that. I personally work with people, and there's offices in Denver. There's a lot of opportunities, definitely growing or that are in the Denver area. Another one that I hear a lot of is actually the Texas area, which actually leads us to number three, which is Houston. So, why don't you give
Yeah,
us a rundown of those numbers?
yeah. Houston had they had a really good salary index. In fact, they were the highest on the list at 139.2. So apparently, the wages are very high in Houston, which is good. Civil engineering job index, they came in at 137.7. So there's some jobs available there. Obviously, not as many as Los Angeles or Denver. And then the cost of living index was spectacular. It was the lowest on the chart here at 81.1.
Mm.
So they came in at 195.9 for their overall score. So Houston, I mean they're up there, man. They've got
Houston, we don't have a problem.
no, we don't. Especially looking at the cost of living index, it's awesome.
So the difference then between the number one spot and the number two spot is almost 80 points. The difference between the number two and number three spot is only eight
It,
points.
yeah, barely 8 points.
That's wild.
So yeah, again, Los Angeles, it's really that civil engineering job index that really, put them over the top and by quite a bit of, big margin there, Isaac.
So
And
if you're ready to go to California, there's a job available for you.
yeah, there's some big voids in California right now.
Hmm.
And then should we go on to the next one? Chicago.
Yeah,
Chicago's number 4. And their salary index came in at 114.6. Civil engineering job index was 161. Cost of living was 95.8, which has surprised me that is lower than Denver. The cost of living index, that's a little surprising to me. And they got an overall score of 179.8 for fourth place.
So the difference between number three and number four then is what is that? About 20?
Not quite 20. Yeah, like what are we, 16 there?
16-point difference there. And then the rest are just probably pretty close to each other. So
yeah, the next ones are all pretty tight. So Dallas came in at 5th. So salary was at 89.8. The job
which is
index,
good for Texas, right? You've got two cities on the list. I mean,
Texas is they're a big market. They're a big market these
lots
days.
going on in Texas.
There's a lot going on in Texas. So Dallas had that salary index at 89.8, and then job index at 175.4. Cost of living was decent at 94.1. So not as good as Houston, obviously but
Houston's so hot though.
so
hot.
It gets warm there. You got to have air conditioning. But then Dallas comes in at a total score of 171.1. So nice job at 5th. And then who do we got at number 6, Isaac?
6, we got Atlanta. We'll probably just jump. We could probably just jump to, I don't know. People care about salaries, right? So you've got a 90 on your salary index. which is, quite a bit less than Houston and Los Angeles. So you're not getting paid as much there in Atlanta. The job index is pretty high still, and then you're at 164.9, and then your cost of living is real low, 88.2. So
Yeah.
that's not bad.
That one's nice.
So Atlanta's a good one with a total score of 166.7. So Atlanta's a good one to go to.
Yeah.
After that, you hit Washington, D.C., and here, obviously, I think your cost of living is way higher, but your salary index is pretty good at 108. It's not the highest, but it's close. I mean,
yeah, Washington D.C. Cost of living index is comparable to Los Angeles, isn't it?
Yeah, I find that interesting. So if you're looking for highest salary, though, looking at that list, it's Houston that's going to pay the most. But yeah, so Washington, D.C., 108.1. You've got a job index of 183, which is pretty good. It means they have a lot of jobs. And then your cost of living is almost 129, which is fairly high, and the total score of 162.8.
Yeah.
Let's do 8, 9, and 10 real quick. So,
all right. So let's
Phoenix.
Round this up. Phoenix is at number 8. So their salary index is 100.1. So job index was 139.8. Cost of living was low at 84.8. And their composite score was 155.1. So that gives them the 8th spot. The 9th spot was New York City. And so their salary
Not
index,
that great.
it was at 101.8. So I don't know. I think that's a little bit low for New York City. But their civil engineering job index, 166.4. I would say that's average. If you look at them all, it's not off the charts like Los Angeles and Denver, but it's kind of in the average range. And then the cost of living is the highest of any municipal area there, 134.6, Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive to live in New York City, but that's not surprising. Overall score for New York City was 133.6. And then last but not least, in 10th place, they got good old Detroit, the Motor City. Salary survey, they came in at 119.2. Civil engineering job index, 101.6. So they're about average for the country as far as number of available positions. Cost of living index was relatively low at 89.4. And then their overall score was at 131.4. So
I like it.
That rounds us out.
So I think it's important for everyone to know that these have been done like every year, and I think they do display a little figure that talks about the rankings over the past few years, and really those 3 spots: Los Angeles, Denver, and Houston. Anyway, those top 3, they just kind of switch spots. You know what I mean? So they bounce based on their charts. Houston's been number 1 for the past couple of years, and Los Angeles has been number 2 for the last few years, and Denver's number 3. But they bounce around between the top 3 spots. It looks like this year Los Angeles has shaken out as number 1, Denver 2, and Houston 3. Last year Los Angeles was 2, Denver was 3, and Houston was 1. So I imagine those top 3 will probably bounce around next year too. I guess we'll see.
I bet you're right. It's just interesting to look at this stuff. I mean, the reason why the civil engineering job index is so high too in Los Angeles, it could be part of that could be the cost of living index is one of the highest too. People can't afford living there, and the salary survey index is, it's fairly average at 109. So it's just interesting to look at those trends from year to year. But Houston,
I agree.
I'm even though they rank Houston 3rd, in my mind, that one's killing it. The salaries are high. The availability of jobs for civil engineering is, higher than we'll say the average at 100 at 137, and cost of living is, 81.1. I don't know.
Nice.
If I were to offer my opinion, I'd look at that and go, sheesh, Houston's kind of the sweet spot there, even though they're ranked number 3rd.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a bad spot.
No.
In my opinion, looking at it. So
Yeah.
again, it's hot in Houston.
But it's warm there. Yeah. Yeah. You got to deal with that heat.
So, I mean, as an engineer, what I guess in your opinion, what do you care about most? Because one of the things they talk about in this report is that salaries are tied to degrees. They display how salaries are related to whether you have a bachelor's, a master's, or even an MBA. They also talk about some other items in there, whether you're a diplomate and whether
Mhm.
and what that equates to. So, as an engineer, it seems to me that salary is probably the most important thing. Obviously, cost of living I think is high there too, but as it relates to this index and stuff, do you feel like salary is probably what engineers care the most about, or well, I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's probably at the top of the list. But I would also, and then I would say that I don't know, the cost of living would be the next thing. I mean, if you're living in an area that doesn't that's fairly high, and you're, even though you may be drawing a higher salary than some of the others, if you're living in an area that's taking it all because of, maybe you're in a higher tax structure, and just the basic necessities of, groceries and healthcare and housing, and maybe your real estate market is just crazy, and even though you're making a higher salary in a certain area, it's all getting taken, right? And it doesn't give you any additional disposable income. So I would say, and again, this goes back to why I think Houston has the sweet spot, because they've got that high salary index, but their cost of living is low. And so I would say it's kind of a combination of those two things, Isaac. You want the higher salary, but you want it to yield some more disposable income for you, so that you can, I don't know, direct that income into your activities and your things that you want to do, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So,
So, as part of this survey, they also said that becoming certified in a specialty can also provide a big salary boost to people. And they
mhm,
talk about becoming what they call a diplomate for
mhm.
water resources and geotech. I don't think many engineers even know what that is. So, what is a diplomate?
So within ASCE, there's different, I'll call them sub organizations, sub industry organizations within the engineering community. And they have a board. So, for example, the geotechnical um, area of engineering has a professional certification board. Um, they call it the Geo Professional Board. And if you get a certification from that board, and again, it's a kind of a subgroup of ASCE, then you get the diplomate designation, or the diplomate credential, which is a D.GE credential that you get to put after your name. Maybe it's, Isaac, you could be Isaac Okeson, PE D.GE, for your diplomate designation. But what that does is it certifies, or it assures the public, and then your colleagues and everybody that you work with, that you meet, I don't know, another, I guess, extra level of professionalism, professional qualifications. You have to apply for this designation, and you have to be approved by the board. Obviously, you need to be a licensed engineer. You have to have at least a master's degree in your field, and you have to have a certain number of years of experience. I think it's usually about 8 years of professional experience. And so, um, once you've amassed all of that all of that experience and all of that education, it's a designation you can apply for and get it.
And well, they also mention what those figures are. So if you are a water resource engineer that is a diplomate, they list a median of 166K,
yeah,
which is a sweet salary.
yeah,
And if you're geotech, they list that as 177K. So
yeah, those are
good
sweet.
stuff there.
Yeah, so if that's something that you want to set as a goal for yourself to achieve that credential, there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. So sweet. Well, this has been a fun discussion. Hopefully, people learned about the top places for civil engineers to work at. I know I definitely learned something as we went through the article and talked about it today. So, Mark, appreciate you jumping on and sharing that with us.
You bet. Anytime, man.
All right. See you guys in the next one.
See ya.
Bye.